Before Napoleon dreamed of empire, before Alexander carved a path through Asia, before Rome claimed the Mediterranean as its own, there was Assyria, a civilization that rose from riverbanks and trade routes to become one of the world's first true empires. Long before the concept of empire was fully formed, the Assyrians were already building one. Not just through brute force, though they had plenty of that, but through administration, ideology, and the calculated use of fear. In the heart of Mesopotamia, on the banks of the Tigris River, stood the city of Ashur. It began as a humble trading hub, its economy driven by tin, textiles, and tenacity. But this was no ordinary city. It was named after Ashur, a god who wasn't just worshipped. He was embodied in the land, in the king, in the empire itself. The Assyrians didn't separate state and spirit. To rule was to serve the divine. To conquer was to fulfill a cosmic order. Around 1300 BCE, a high priest named Ashur-uballit crowned himself king, and with that, Assyria's story changed forever. No longer just a city-state, Assyria became a territorial state, a centralized power that extended its influence far beyond its borders. What followed was a new kind of rule. Assyria didn't simply dominate through swords. It built systems, administrative districts, supply chains, networks of roads and messengers. From the Zagros Mountains to the Mediterranean Sea, a single authority governed a vast mosaic of languages, beliefs, and customs. And yet their legacy isn't one of harmony. The Assyrians were feared, for good reason. They perfected the psychological side of war. They used terror as a tool, engraving their victories into stone panels that depicted sieges, executions, and exiles in chilling, cinematic detail. But their brutality wasn't reckless. It was strategic. They knew the power of a reputation. To resist Assyria was not just a military risk. It was a warning to every future opponent. Fall in line or face annihilation. Still, they were more than conquerors. Assyrian cities like Nineveh became centers of culture and learning. They built vast libraries filled with cuneiform tablets, cataloging everything from medicine to astronomy. They created sprawling parks, precursors to modern zoos and botanical gardens, showcasing animals and plants from across their domain. It was a display not just of wealth, but of knowledge, curiosity, and control over nature. But no empire is eternal. In the 12th century BCE, a mysterious collapse swept the Near East, and Assyria, like many others, fell into decline. Yet it was not the end. By the 9th century BCE, they rose again, stronger, sharper, and more ruthless. Assyrian kings like Tiglath-Pileser III and Sennacherib refined the empire into a military machine and a bureaucratic powerhouse. They introduced standing armies, provincial governors, and deportation policies that reshaped populations to prevent rebellion. This second wave of empire reached its zenith in the 7th century BCE, under rulers like Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. At its height, Assyria controlled a territory stretching from Egypt to western Iran. But with that scale came fragility. Internal strife, overreach, and rising enemies spelled doom. By 612 BCE, a coalition of former subjects, Babylonians, Medes, and Scythians, descended on Nineveh. The great city burned. The empire crumbled. Yet Assyria left behind something far more enduring than walls or thrones. They pioneered the idea of empire as a system, not just conquest, but organization, infrastructure, and ideology. Their methods, however harsh, laid the groundwork for what would follow: Persia, Rome, Byzantium, and beyond. In the ruins of Assyria, we find the blueprint of global power, a vision of rule that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. a reminder that every empire begins not with land, but with an idea of order, of destiny, of who should rule whom. And in that idea, Assyria was first.